you think of Darth Maul, perhaps it's those piercing red and black tattoos that come to mind, the ancient markings stretched across a face carved in fury. Or maybe it's the way his yellow eyes burn with a hatred so sharp it cuts without words. Maybe it's that double-bladed lightsaber humming like some dreadful omen through the air. But beyond the iconic face, beyond the weapon, lies something far deeper. Story not just of a villain, but of a soul forged in agony. A life shaped by rage, survival, and a hunger so desperate it became his only purpose. Maul's journey is not merely the tale of a Sith, it is the slow, burning unraveling of a being caught between purpose and pain, born into the dark clutches of the Sith. Maul was never simply trained. He was molded, stripped of childhood, sculpted into a weapon. From the beginning, he was promised nothing but pain. That pain would become his compass, his shield, his gospel. It was the ruthless pursuit of power and discipline that defined every waking breath. A life pushed to the edge, not just physically, but spiritually. And yet, even when broken, seemingly lost forevermore, clawed his way back from the void, dragging his shattered form with a single burning goal. Vengeance, not only against the Jedi, but against the Master who had discarded him like a broken blade. Over the next few hours, we'll trace every blood-soaked step of Maul's life, from his brutal training under Darth Sidious, to his rise as a chaotic force of destruction, and ultimately to his fall. But this is more than a chronicle of battle and betrayal. This is the story of a warrior who refused to die, who turned agony into purpose and rage into power, who rose again, not because he could, but because he must. And so, we go back to the beginning where a child not yet named Maul, not yet a Sith, was seen by a dark and watchful eye. He was born in 54 BBY, on the shadowed and haunted world of Dathomira Place, drenched in dark whispers and older magics. There, among the twisted forests and blood-red skies, a boy took his first breath. Not yet Maul, not yet Sith, just a child of the Night Brothers. His mother Talzin was no ordinary woman. She was a Night Sister of terrifying power, a sorceress who commanded the dark currents of the Force with ancient ritual and unflinching will. Her son, a Zabrak by blood, was marked from birth. He would never know an ordinary life. The darkness wrapped around him even in infancy, swirling like smoke around a dying fire. The Force moved through him, not gently, not kindly, but as a storm. Even before he could walk, the sacred and savage tattoos of his people were carved into his skin. The red and black geometry followed the curve of his horns, etching pain into identity. These were not mere symbols. They were rites. They were spells. They were declarations. Through ancient Night Sister rituals, he was marked not just as one of them, but as something more, as something claimed by the darkness. The Force pulsed differently around the young Zabrak. His brothers Savage, Opress, and Feral would also show signs of power. But Maul's gift was not merely Force sensitivity. His connection to the dark side was singular, unrelenting, violent. To Mother Talzin, her son was a vessel, channel through which forgotten powers might rise again. But everything changed the day Darth Sidious arrived on Dathomir. The Sith Lord came cloaked in lies, speaking of alliances, pretending to seek knowledge, offering Sith teachings in return for Night Sister magic. But that was never his true purpose. He came for the child. He had felt the raw, untempered potential within the boy. Here was a vessel, living, breathing, storm-waiting, to be forged into a blade. In 40 BBY, the pretense ended. Sidious revealed his true self, casting aside his false promises. He did not take Talzin as his apprentice, as he had claimed he would. Instead, he stole her son. A betrayal so deep it would echo across decades. A moment that would reshape destinies. For Talzin, it was a curse. For Maul, it was the death of one life and the beginning of another. From that day on, the child was no longer a night brother. He was no longer a son. He was Maul. What followed was not training, it was transformation. Sidious took his stolen apprentice to secret Sith worlds, among them Mustafar, the volcanic crucible of pain. There, Maul was tested in ways few could survive. His body was broken, his mind twisted, his soul hollowed and refilled. The boy he had been was buried beneath fire and fury. He was taught Form 7 Duo, the most aggressive, wild, and dangerous lightsaber form. Every movement a scream, every strike a storm. He fought assassin droids, sparred with trained killers. Every moment was violence, until violence became breath, until rage became rhythm. But Maul's education was not confined to combat. Sidious taught him engineering, subterfuge, political strategy. He was not just a warrior, he was an instrument. Every lesson had one purpose: to forge the perfect Jedi killer. The dark side was not offered to him, was forced into him, drop by drop. Scream by scream. The turning point came when Maul finally surrendered, when he stopped resisting the anger inside and let it become him. His hatred, once scattered and confused, began to focus. It became weaponized. Sidious had been waiting for that moment. The moment when Maul didn't just use the dark side, but lived it as the years passed. Maul became more than an apprentice. He became a precision instrument of vengeance. A blade not just sharp, but eager. A creature of purpose. The ultimate Sith enforcer. Yet beneath the surface, the wounds of his stolen life never healed. His fury wasn't just aimed outward. It was the echo of a child ripped from his mother's arms. A child told that pain was love, that cruelty was purpose, that hatred was truth. And so the boy of Dathomir became the Sith called Maul, no longer flesh and soul, but fury and blade. This transformation, this shaping of a night brother into a nightmare, was not just about training. It was programming, deep and permanent. Maul's entire existence served one purpose: to become the vengeance of the Sith Order. Every breath he took, every scar, every lesson, it all pointed to one end: the destruction of the Jedi Order and the conquest of the Republic. Under Sidious's brutal instruction, Maul moved beyond mere talent. He became something singular. In time, he constructed a weapon unlike any other, his iconic double-bladed lightsaber. A marvel of ancient Sith design fused with modern ingenuity. 2 blades, 2 fates, a warning to the galaxy that the Sith had returned. Sidious didn't just train Maul to kill. He taught him to understand the Jedi, to study them, to know their every technique, their every weakness. Every sparring session was a symphony of pain and precision, and Sidious watched it all. Not with warmth, but with calculation. To test his creation, Sidious sent Maul on shadow missions. One of the first was to the Kulos system, where pirates disrupted Trade Federation activity. Maul's orders: eliminate the threat. And he did, flawlessly. But it was what followed that would mark a turning point. Maul learned that a young Jedi Padawan Eldra, Katazwas, being auctioned off by the Zrexis cartel. Sidious warned him, stay hidden, wait. But Maul couldn't resist. He had been built to kill Jedi, and now one was within reach. So he defied his master, with quiet determination. He assembled a team bounty hunters like Cad Bane and Aura Singh, and they hunted Katie's. The mission wasn't just another kill. It was Maul's first chance to fulfill his destiny. Katie's fought valiantly, but Maul's training prevailed. As he struck her down, he felt it, victory. The thrill of fulfilling what he was made to do. Sid was not pleased. Maul had disobeyed, but the Sith Lord also saw the value in this thirst. He saw that Maul's bloodlust could be useful, that this weapon was ready to be unleashed. That moment came with the Trade Federation's blockade of Naboo, when Jedi Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi were sent to resolve the crisis. Sidious sent Maul to track them. For the first time, Maul stepped into the light and into legend. On Tatooine, his duel with Qui-Gon was short, but monumental. For the first time in 1,000 years, Jedi and Sith clashed blades. The Force itself trembled. The Jedi Council felt it. The Sith had returned, and now the galaxy would never be the same. Let me know when you're ready for the next section, from the Duel of the Fates to Maul's resurrection. But the Force had other plans, deep within the bowels of that reactor. Shaft where silence should have marked his end, something impossible happened. The dark side, like a lover unwilling to let go, coiled around Maul's shattered form. It did not speak, it did not command, it simply refused to release him. Not through conscious thought, not through vengeance or design, but through pure, instinctive survival, a feral cry from the shadows of the Force itself. Darth Maul lived. His body, broken and bisected, should have crumbled into death. But the dark side's grip was absolute. Where breath faltered, hate held firm. Where organs failed, fury ignited. Maul endured. Somehow, impossibly, he endured. The Duel of the Fates was never just a battle. It was the breaking of a seal. End of 1,000 years of hiding. A whisper turned scream. The Sith had emerged, and though none who stood upon Naboo that day could have imagined it, that duel was not the end of a story, was the prologue. The first note in a terrible symphony of revenge that would echo across the stars. Few beings could survive what Maul did, cut in half, discarded like refuse. But Maul was not like other beings. A combination of raw dark-side energy and the iron physiology of a Dathomirian Zabrak kept his spark alive, barely. His ruined body, swept away with the garbage of a galactic war machine, was unceremoniously dumped into a refuse container. That trash vessel drifted, unnoticed, to a place called Lotho Minora, junkyard world where wreckage came to die. Lotho Minor was not a world. It was a wound, choked with poison air, its skies thick with ash and rot. The planet was a graveyard for machines and men alike. Yet somehow, Maul survived. On instinct alone, he clawed his way through mountains of scrap and bone. Rage was his compass, hatred, his breath. His first need was movement, mobility, and so, using the rusted remnants of forgotten machines, he cobbled together a grotesque solution. A spider-like apparatus of salvaged a monstrous fusion of metal and meat, legs forged from hate, joints held together by will. With this grotesque creation, he scuttled through the junk fields, neither man nor droid, but some terrible hybrid, sustained by fury. This was no longer the graceful warrior who had once faced Jedi on polished palace floors. This was something else, a thing born of vengeance. Among the ruins, Maul found an unlikely companion, a snake-like scavenger named Morley. The anacondan struck a bargain scraps. of food for scraps of metal. It was not friendship, it was survival. Morley, clever and selfish, served as Maul's only connection to the outside world, and in return Maul gave him protection. Or perhaps a monster to fear. As the years dragged on, Maul's mind slipped further into ruin. His thoughts were loops, his memories twisted. He muttered endlessly of revenge of Obi-Wan. Always Obi-Wan. His defeat had carved something jagged into his soul. He crawled through the damp tunnels of his cave home, speaking to no one, plotting vengeance in madness. The dark side no longer flowed through him with clarity. It churned, storm-like, around, his broken sick feeding the chaos within. Meanwhile, the galaxy forgot him. On Coruscant, Maul's name became a lesson, a case study. Padawans, trained against droids programmed with his movements. He was no longer a threat, just a simulation. Even young Anakin Skywalker fought against the ghost of maltoning his legacy into routine. But salvation would come, and from the one place still tethered to his forgotten humanity, Dathomir, Mother Talzin knew, somehow through her rituals and sorcery, she felt her son's suffering. She sent another of her sons, Savage Opress, Maul's own brother, to find him. The search led Savage to the shadows of Lotho Minor, and to the twisted remains of the warrior who had once been called Darth Maul. When Savage finally found him, Maul was a ghost. Half beast, half madness. His mind fractured, his body deformed. He gibbered and twitched, barely aware of the world. But within that broken shell, something still burned. Savage didn't turn away. He carried his brother from the wreckage. He brought him home to Dathom. There, in the dark catacombs of the Night Sisters, Mother Talzin prepared her most powerful rite. She would do what rusted legs and hatred could not. She would make her son whole again. With ancient Night Sister magics, she began. Green mists enveloped him alive, electric, writhing with power. The spider limbs were torn away, replaced by true cybernetic legs, sleek, deadly, silent. His mind, shattered and echoing with years of torment, was slowly rewoven by Talzin's touch. The process was agony. Maul screamed long and loud, the sound of a soul being reforged. And then silence. When the mists cleared, Maul stood. No longer a creature, no longer a memory, a warrior reborn. The grace returned to his steps, the clarity to his thoughts, and the vengeance to his heart. This transformation was not merely physical, it was spiritual. He was no longer a discarded toy, nor was he just a Night Sister's son. He was something new, a weapon tempered in madness, a darkness with its own name. Mother Talzin's motivations ran deeper than maternal love. Sidious had stolen Maul from her, had used him, had thrown him away. Now she had him back, and through him she could strike at the Sith who betrayed her, but she did not seek to control him. Once healed, she stepped aside. Maul would choose his own path, and he did, swiftly, viciously. With his strength restored, Maul's mind turned immediately to power, to revenge. The years of isolation had sharpened his ambition. He no longer bowed to the rule of two. He was not bound by Sith doctrine. He would create something of his own, something greater. Within days he left Dathomir, Savage Opress by his side. He did not take the Night Sister magic with him, but it lingered within him nonetheless, a whisper, a mark, a reminder of the power that had remade him. His view of the dark side had widened, and so had his goals. Maul would not rebuild the Sith Empire. He would build something else. A shadow empire. His own design. His own rules. The galaxy would soon learn. Maul was not just alive. He was transformed. From this rebirth came the rise of the Shadow Collective, the conquest of Mandalore, and a renewed pursuit of his greatest obsession, Kenobi. It all began on Dathomir. After his restoration, Maul's hunger surged. The Clone Wars raged across the stars, Republic and Separatist forces clashing, and Maul saw opportunity. Amid chaos, he would create control, not as a Sith, as a ruler. He began quietly, assembling power through force and fear. A criminal empire, a network of syndicates forged with threat and blade. This would be the Shadow Collective, his first. Alliance came through Death Watch, an exiled Mandalorian faction led by Pre Vizsla. They sought to reclaim their homeworld from Duchess Satine's pacifist rule. They needed firepower. Maul needed soldiers. Their union was one of mutual use. Vizsla saw Maul as a means to an end. Maul saw Vizsla as a foundation for something far greater. Together, they began expanding. The next target was Black Sun, one of the galaxy's most powerful crime syndicates. On Mustafar, Maul and Savage entered their stronghold. The Council of Leadership hesitated. They did not hesitate long. Savage decapitated the entire leadership with a single stroke. The message was written in blood. Join or die. Black Sun joined. The Pike Syndicate followed. Lords of the spice trade. The Pikes understood the shifting tides. They fell in line quickly, bringing with them wealth and a labyrinth of smuggling routes. Maul's network group, hour layered upon power. Each new syndicate added reach, resources, territory. The Shadow Collective was becoming something real, something dangerous. A web across the stars, all leading back to Maul. But his boldest move came next. The Hutt clans on Nal Hutta. Maul marched into the Grand Council chamber of the Hutt Sentient. Powerful, entrenched. He made demands. They refused. He responded. With steel, his forces clashed with the Hutts, and once again Maul demonstrated what resistance meant. Faced with the threat of annihilation, the Hutts yielded. Their loyalty was thin, slippery, like their skin. But Maul didn't need loyalty, he needed reach. And the Hutts controlled vast swaths of space. That was enough. With the Black Sun, the Pikes, Death Watch, and the Hutts under his banner, Maul's empire was real. His vision was near complete, and now he turned his eye to Mandalore, his masterpiece. The plan was simple in shape, brilliant in execution. Unleash criminal attacks across Mandalorian space. Force Duchess Satine to call for help. Then arrive as the savior, clean, powerful, conquering. Let me know when you're ready for the next chapter. The siege of Mandalore, and the unraveling of everything Maul built. And so they began, terrorizing the population. Across Mandalore, coordinated chaos erupted. Black Sun's assassins struck at government facilities with cold precision. The Pikes disrupted supply lines, choking the flow of essentials. And the Hutzel with shadowy benefactors quietly funded the wave of destruction rippling across the sector. Each criminal group played its part like a note in Maul's twisted symphony, all as he had envisioned as fear and desperation spread. Like wildfire, the people of Mandalore turned. They looked not to their pacifist Duchess Satine, but to the only ones who appeared to be acting, the only ones fighting back. Death Watch, the same Death Watch that had lit the fire now appeared as saviors, heroes born from the smoke. It was all by design, Maul's design. This campaign was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. A convergence of worlds that had never before shared a table. The raw brutality of criminal empires, the mystical strength of force-wielding leadership, and the disciplined military precision of Mandalorian warriors, all under the command of one fallen Sith, under Maul, once rival. Factions now moved in lockstep. Groups that had slaughtered each other over territory and spice now took orders from the same voice. Their shared enemy was silence. Their shared motive fear. Together they became more than they ever were apart. They became the Shadow Collective. Their operations, under Maul's eye, became brutally efficient. Each success brought more credits, more soldiers, more planets, from the spice markets of Nal Hutta to the smuggling routes of the Outer Rim. Maul's influence crept like a tide of inconstoppable and growing. Criminal lords who once ruled alone now bowed before the former Sith apprentice who stood at the center of it, cloaked in fire and shadow. His style of leadership was forged in Sith doctrine, absolute authority enforced through fear and respect. But Maul was more than a warlord. He was a tactician. He knew when to push and when to pull, when to crush and when to allow his criminal partners their illusions of control. This was not about greed. It was not about collecting trophies. It was about building something vast, something that could challenge the very foundations of galactic power. The true purpose of the Shadow Collective was now undeniable. This was no mere criminal enterprise. It was a platform, a war machine, a crown without a throne, and, till now, each credit extorted, each contract signed, each alliance struck, inched Maul closer to his true ambition, to strike at his enemies, to rise beyond them. Even S-I-D-I-O-U-S. And so the Shadow Collective took shape not in chaos, but in precision. Each syndicate kept its own command, its own hierarchy, but they all answered to Maul. Black Sun provided assassins and spies. The Pikes choked supply lines and trade. The Hutts opened gateways into the underworld's deepest arteries. And Deathwatch was the blade, the army, the crushing hammer. Together, they formed something that neither the Republic nor the Separatists could afford to ignore. And they didn't. As Maul's armies prepared for the final blow, Mandalore, the Collective reached its peak. No longer a scattered alliance of criminals, it had become something terrifying, an underground empire with the strength to rival governments. But empires forged in blood and ambition have always lived under the shadow of betrayal. The conquest of Mandalore would be their greatest triumph, and the beginning of their fall. Pre-Vizsla and Deathwatch launched their attack as planned, appearing to the people of Mandalore as liberators, driving out the very chaos they had secretly unleashed. The exhausted and frightened citizens embraced them, exactly as Maul intended. Victory should have united them, but victory revealed ambition. Vizsla, drunk on glory, decided Maul's usefulness had come to an end. In a calculated betrayal, he had Maul and Savage Opress arrested, parading them before the people as enemies of Mandalore traitors he had exposed. It was clever. Vizsla would be the hero, the sole protector, and Maul, the scapegoat. Before a gathered crowd, Vizsla delivered his speech, casting the Sith brothers as the architects of recent horrors. It secured his rule, at least in appearance. But Vizsla had forgotten or never fully understood who he had crossed. Maul had not come to fight a war. He had come to take a throne, breaking free from his cell with the ease of a shadow slipping through a crack. Maul knew what must be done. He would claim the Mandalorian throne not through deception, but by their own tradition in the throne room of Sundari. Maul issued his challenge: single combat, winner takes all. What followed was a duel etched into Mandalorian legend. Vizsla was no mere pretender. He wielded the ancient darksaber, its black blade humming with history and purpose. Rockets fired from his gauntlets, fire erupted from his wrist. His jetpack gave him speed, his armor resilience. He fought like the warlord he had always claimed to be. But Maul was not a warrior. He was a weapon, trained by Darth Sidious, forged. In death, resurrected by hate, Maul met every strike with impossible speed, every assault with terrifying precision. Sith brutality met Mandalorian pride, and the throne room burned with their clash. Slowly, inevitably, Maul broke him down. When Vizsla fell to his knees, his weapon stripped from him, he did not beg, he bowed. Bound by ancient code, he accepted his death, and Maul delivered it. The darksaber passed to new hands. By Mandalorian law, Maul was now ruler. But not all would accept him. Bo-Katan Kryze, Vizsla's lieutenant and sister to Duchess Satine, refused to kneel. She and her night owls splintered away, igniting civil war. Mandalorian against Mandalorian, honor against law to secure his rule. Maul reached for another weapon: politics. He reinstated the disgraced Prime Minister, Olmec, as the public face of power, masking his own rule behind the facade of tradition. Deathwatch warriors who accepted Maul's victory repainted their armor crimson and black, reflecting their allegiance to the horned Sith they now called Master. From the throne of Sundari, Maul controlled Mandalore, his criminal syndicates, his armies, his fortress city. He had done the unthinkable. A Sith ruled the warriors of Mandalore by their own laws. But the galaxy was watching, and so was Sidious. Maul's power had grown too great, too public, too defiant, and Darth Sidious would not allow it. The throne room of Sundari would become the site of reckoning. Sidious arrived as a storm, no longer the shrouded chancellor, but as the Dark Lord of the Sith. He came not to speak, not to threaten, but to end in that chamber. As Maul sat beside Savage, the air grew heavy with the dark side. Sidious stepped forward, his voice a knife. "I sense you have become a rival, Maul." And then the sabers ignited. What followed was not a duel, it was a reckoning. Sidious wielded twin crimson blades, moving with impossible grace and fury. Savage and Maul struck together, two blades against the master who had forged them both. But Sidious was beyond them, beyond strength, beyond hate. He danced through their attacks, laughing, toying. Savage fell, first cut down by Sidious with surgical violence. Maul screamed as his brother collapsed, stripped of the magic that had given him form. His body faded, the illusion gone. Maul's rage surged. But Sidious did not falter. The gap between them became unmistakable. Malva warrior, the survivor, the King of Shadows, was still a child to the Dark Lord. Sidious battered him with the Force, his strikes relentless, monstrous. No mercy, no hesitation. And when it was over, Maul, bloodied, broken, disarmed, knelt again before the master who had once discarded him. His throne shattered, his empire trembling. The Shadow King had risen, and now he would fall. Let me know when you're ready to continue with the next chapter, the fall of the Shadow Collective and Maul's final spiral through exile, war, and revenge. And beaten, Maul was forced to his knees before Sidous. There was no mercy, there is no mercy. The Dark Lord reminded him, his voice void of compassion, as cold as the vacuum between stars. Then, with a flick of his hand, he unleashed a torrent of force lightning. Maul convulsed, his body writhing in agony, every muscle seizing as the storm tore through him. But death was not his fate. Sidious had other plans, plans that stretched beyond pain, beyond punishment. Plans shaped by cruelty, control, and the long memory of the Sith. Maul was transported to the Spire, the notorious prison of Stygian Prime. There, in a specially designed cell built to hold Forsoozers, he faced not only confinement, but the full weight of failure, the empire he had built, the power he had claimed, the brother he had fought beside, all of it gone. And yet, in that cold and lightless cell, Maul's spirit remained unbroken. He began again. Not physically, his body still smoldered from Sidious's punishment, but mentally, quietly, relentlessly. His mind turned over the puzzle of escape, again and again, like a meditation of shadows. The shadow, collective, once terrifying in its coordination, collapsed overnight without Maul's leadership. The Hutt clans withdrew into their own sectors. Black Sun distanced themselves from Mandalorian affairs. The Pikes, true to form, scattered to their independent dealings. What had been forged through fear and ambition now dissolved in the face of a greater power. On Mandalore, Maul's absence left a gaping vacuum. Bo-Katan's resistance gained strength, but the planet's wounds were deep, and healing was far away. The Chaos Maul had unleashed his systems. His alliances would leave scars on Mandalorian society that would endure, and eventually invite the iron grip of Imperial occupation. For Maul, this prison was not an end, but a transformation, no. Longer was he the would-be ruler of a criminal empire. No longer the master of Mandalore, he had become something else, something forged by hatred and shaped by defeat, but not extinguished in the cold and silent dark. New plans began to form, bitter and slow, forged by pain and tempered by the lessons of Sidious's return. For in that return, Maul had seen a brutal truth. In this galaxy, no matter how clever the design, no empire could stand against the full might of the Sith Master, and yet even as Sidious celebrated victory he had unknowingly contributed to Maul's evolution. Maul would emerge from that prison, changed. His ambitions would shift, but his will to survive would burn hotter than ever, and his obsession with Kenobi, undiminished in the bowels of a Sidious-controlled facility within the sterile quiet of a force-proof Seltha Fallen Sith apprentice, endured tortures that no report ever fully recorded. It was 19 BBY, and the once-proud warrior had become a prisoner. His body was confined, but his spirit fierce fireborn was not. The darkness that once fueled him as a Sith had curdled into something even more potent. Obsession, a single thought that defined the remainder of his existence. Kenobi, revenge, OBI-1 Kenobi, had taken everything. His place, his power, his body. That name became the center of Maul's galaxy. His escape from Sidious's grasp was not simply survival, it was rebirth. Each moment of pain, each hour in darkness, every breath of isolation, all of it crystallized into purpose. The Jedi who had split him in two now stood as the only light in Maul's broken cosmos, a light he would extinguish with his own hand. Reports from Imperial intelligence detail Maul's movements after his escape erratic, yes, but they were purposeful. He hunted, he moved from system to system, eliminating anyone who might know where Kenobi was. Interrogation, followed by execution, interrogation, then silence. The bodies he left behind told the story. Each victim was questioned, each death precise, each designed to keep the victim alive long enough to talk, to scream, to beg. This was not rage, this was focus. This was a predator with patience. The psychological toll of Naboo had changed him. Medical droids examining his victims noted patterns, the incisions, the pain, all designed to extract, to prolong, to inflict, but with control. He had become something else, with metal legs cobbled from scavenged parts and dark sorcery. Maul walked the galaxy like a revenant, half machine, half vengeance. Surveillance captured glimpses. Maul in starports, always alone, always alert. He would stand for hours, meditating not in peace, like the Jedi, but in hatred, using pain like a signal fire, casting it into the Force, hunting for the one soul he longed to extinguish. Sometimes witnesses said Maul would go silent mid-conversation. His yellow eyes would grow distant, his fingers gouging metal as he whispered a name, Kenobi. The Force itself would twist around him, a vortex of hate. Even the untrained felt it, like a sickness in the air. And as his hunt intensified, Maul began leaving signs, deliberate ones, ancient Sith symbols, carved into the walls of outposts and villages, messages, warnings, lures. He knew Kenobi's code. Jedi would investigate. Eventually, Kenobi would come. The psychological warfare escalated. He studied every mission Kenobi had ever undertaken, every pattern of his diplomacy, his fighting stances, his tactics. This wasn't just about death anymore. This was about understanding Kenobi, deconstructing him, unmaking his legacy, destroying everything he stood for. Even Maul's Force signature changed. Force sensitives who encountered him during this time described it not as Sithno, but as a void, a tear in the Force itself, a presence that made even other dark side users recoil. His hatred had corrupted his connection. What remained was something primal, something broken. As the years passed, Maul's name became legend. Whispers among bounty hunters warned of it. Never accept a contract that might lead to Kenobi. It was death. He had become more than ASITH. He was myth, a ghost, a cautionary tale. Hatred sustained him, but it also destroyed him. This chapter, this long road of blood and whispers, was the forge for everything that followed. His escape from Sidious had freed him, but he had bound himself in new chains. Chains made of obsession, chains that would one day drag him to the burning sands of Tatooine, where it would end. Let me know when you're ready for the next chapter. Return to Mandalore and the siege, already transformed with the same poetic reverence. And I will help you, Maul told the boy. Simple words, but chosen with surgical precision through recovered holocron recordings. We can trace exactly how Maul positioned himself. Phaz, more than an ally, more than a threat. He became a mentor figure, a shadow beneath the light, exploiting the quiet gaps in Ezra's Jedi training. His approach was masterful. He never pushed too hard. He never demanded. He only offered freely, graciously, and yet each piece of knowledge he gave carried with it a hook of darkness. Their first bond was forged through the Sith holocron. What makes this manipulation so insidious is not just Maul's cunning, but his understanding of the fragile, aching mind of a teenage boy. He didn't try to drag Ezra to the dark side. No, that would have been too obvious, too crude. Instead, he simply showed Ezra that power could protect those he loved. It was a seduction as old as the Force itself. In the depths of the Sith Temple, the two worked together to claim that ancient artifact. But the holocron wasn't the true prize. The real treasure was trust. Security footage recovered from the temple's crumbling systems shows Maul stepping back, deliberately holding back, allowing Ezra to lead, allowing him to feel powerful, useful, chosen. Every movement, every gesture, every word was part of a careful calculation, a design to create dependency. The cost of this alliance was steep in the fight that followed. Kanan Jarrus was blinded by Maul's lightsaber, calculated injury designed not just to wound a Jedi, but to create distance between master and apprentice. Maul understood this intimately. To claim influence over Ezra, he would first need to weaken existing bonds. The blow to Kanan was not just physical, it was psychological warfare, but it was not pain or violence that cemented Maul's influence. It was knowledge, the promise of power. His genius lay in offering Ezra exactly what the young Jedi believed he needed most: the power to protect his friends, the power to fight the Empire, the power to understand the Force in ways the Jedi had never shown him. The Sith holocron became their shared secret. Its dark wisdom whispered into Ezra's mind during lonely nights aboard the Ghost, and when Maul later reached out through the Force, calling Ezra apprentice, it was more than a word. It was the culmination of every moment, every seed of manipulation, every fractured connection. Their shared vision, quest enabled by the merging of both Sith and Jedi, something deeper than manipulation. It formed a psychic bond, a melding of minds. The holocrons were never meant to be joined. The resulting vision, lunar storm of destiny and shadow, went beyond mere teaching. It was intimate, binding, terrible, and the depths of Maul's influence became unmistakably clear during their journey to Dathomir. Among the swirling green mists and the ancient magics of his haunted homeworld, Maul orchestrated a ritual one that would bind their minds even more closely. The price: possession by ancient Night Sister spirits. A small cost, Maul said, a small cost for the knowledge they sought. What makes this period in Maul's life so haunting is how different he had become. From the wrathful, savage Sith of the Clone Wars to something more elegant, more poisonous. Rather than using fear or dominance, Maul adapted. He employed empathy, understanding. He positioned himself as the only one who truly saw Ezra's pain, his anger, his longing for justice. The manipulation reached its pinnacle when Maul offered Ezra everything, not just teachings about the Force, but insights into family, purpose, identity, power. Recovered logs from this period reveal Ezra growing distant from his family aboard the Ghost. Slowly, silently, Maul's shadow grew longer. But perhaps the most chilling truth was Maul's ultimate goal. He never truly meant to make Ezra a Sith. The boy was a tool, a means to an end, to find Obi-Wan Kenobi. And yet the tragedy lies in this. Somewhere between the manipulation and the madness, Maul may have grown to care for Ezra, but obsession always won out over attachment. The fallen ruler of Mandalore had found a new way to wage war, not with Mandalorian armies or galactic syndicates, but with whispers, with dark lessons in a young boy's ear, with the slow corruption of a single soul. Once, his super commandos had painted Sundari red. Now, Maul painted secrets across a boy's heart, and he proved that his greatest weapon had always been his. the ability to adapt and survive. But, in the end, Ezra proved stronger than Maul had anticipated. The young Jedi's resilience, combined with the unwavering love of his true family aboard the Ghost, kept him from falling fully. Still, the scars remained, a reminder of how the dark side doesn't conquer with fire alone, but with the subtle corruption of noble intentions. The holocrons they once united now lie in separate vaults, a silent monument to how close the galaxy came to witnessing the rise of a new master, an apprentice bound not by light but by shadow. The twin sons of Tatooine cast long shadows across endless dunes, but none longer than that of an aging warrior. His mechanical legs creaking beneath him, moving through the wasteland with singular purpose. After manipulating Ezra Bridger, after merging their holocron visions, Maul had finally gained what he had sought for decades. A path. 2. Kenobi. There is something profoundly tragic about a being who became consumed by a single moment from his past. Maul's obsession had outgrown revenge. It had become his purpose, his reason for existing. The holocron had shown him only fragments. Twin sons, he lives. But that was all Maul needed. Recovered surveillance from scattered settlements shows Maul's methodical search, how he turned the open desert into a grid, a hunting ground. What makes this final pursuit so mesmerizing is how Maul combined ancient Night Sister tracking rituals with the cold logic of modern scanners. He wasn't just searching with his eyes. He was reaching through the Force feeling for the presence of his oldest enemy. Locals spoke of a red and black figure seen at the edges of town. His questions were always the same. Had they seen an old man, a protector, someone who didn't quite belong? Most accounts came from moisture farmers terrified of the dark figure who sometimes lingered near their homes at night, silent, watching. Recovered fragments of Maul's personal writings show his unraveling mind, pages filled with the word Kenobi over and over, each scrawl more frantic than the last. His darkness had condensed into a single point, one name. Despite this mental collapse, his method remained deliberate. Starting from Mos Eisley, Maul moved outward in widening circles, eliminating possibilities, tracking rumors, recruiting Jaws with promises of reward. Tatooine's underworld suffered under his presence. He would enter an establishment quietly, ask his questions, and leave only broken bodies behind. Those who failed to help paid dearly. Even the Hutts took notice. But Maul's Force presence was perhaps the most chilling. Witnesses reported him standing atop dunes at night, arms raised, the sand swirling around him as if drawn to his hatred. The desert itself seemed to respond to him. His tactical approach had changed. Early in the search, he moved quickly, like a beast. But later he slowed, grew patient. A spider now, not a predator. The breakthrough came through Ezra. Using the boy's Force signature as a key, Maul narrowed his search. The dark side flowed through him like fire fueled by decades of longing. Local legends speak of a night when a sandstorm moved against the wind, of mechanical footsteps that left no prints, of golden eyes shining in the dark. Maul had become less than a man, less than a Sith. He was now willpower incarnate, and as he drew close, his behavior grew more erratic. He would sit for hours in deep meditation, chanting Kenobi like a mantra. Stormtroopers stationed nearby reported oddities, equipment malfunctions, sudden cold winds, glimpses of a horned figure vanishing into the haze. The Force itself seemed to tremble. To destinies were nearing convergence. To warriors, bound by fate, drawn across the sands toward a final reckoning. Maul had eliminated every other lead, every false trail. There was only one place left, one stretch of desert, where the twin suns cast their longest shadows. His obsession had finally brought him to the doorstep of destiny, and of Kenobi. The duel on Tatooine began not with aurora but with silence. After decades of obsession, years of searching, and battles that spanned the galaxy, Darth Maul's journey brought him to one moment beneath the stars. The night was cold, as desert nights often are. Obi-Wan Kenobi stood illuminated by firelight. He was no longer the Padawan Maul had once faced, but a weathered warrior centered, a protector. Maul approached, his mechanical legs moving with eerie precision across the sand. His presence in the Force was a vortex filled with hatred, purpose, and a fury that had never quieted. Kenobi remained still. His Force signature was calm, still, like the eye of a storm. Their exchange was brief, but within those words lived the weight of their entire shared history. Maul ignited his blade, the same weapon that had taken the life of Qui-Gon Jinn. Its crimson light bathed the desert in fury. Kenobi's lightsaber responded, its blue glow a quiet defiance, humming with restraint. In those final moments, Maul took a familiar stance, aggressive. It was the same technique he had used in their first encounter, deliberately so. A message. Nothing had changed. He was still the same weapon, forged by Sidious, still the same vessel of pain, still hungry for revenge. The duel lasted only seconds. Maul attacked with the same combination that had once felled a Jedi Master. But Kenobi had waited decades for this moment. With calm clarity, he spurred, and with a single strike ended it. Maul collapsed, and something remarkable happened as life slipped from him. The hatred that had once sustained him began to fade. He looked up at Kenobi and asked, "Is he the chosen one?" Upon hearing the answer, peace crossed his face. For the first time since Dathomir, he died in the arms of the man who had defined his life, his oldest enemy, his final companion. The next morning, the twin suns rose over a single burial site in the desert. Kenobi had buried his enemy with honor, because he knew this was more than the end of a rivalry. It was the close of an era. Darth Maul, the former Sith apprentice, the ruler of Mandalore, the spider in the shadows, had survived dismemberment, madness, and empire. But, in the end, he could not survive the weight of his own obsession, and the dissolution of everything he had built. Finally found rest in the sands of Tatooine, where he confronted his greatest adversary one final time. In death, Maul achieved something that had eluded him through all his years of rage and survival peace. His final moments revealed a quiet, aching truth about the nature of hatred and obsession. They are fires that consume those who feed them. The warrior who had once ruled Mandalore, who had commanded criminal empires and struck terror into the hearts of Jedi, ended his long tortured journey not with rage, not with defiance, but with understanding. The site of their final duel became just another unmarked patch of desert, indistinguishable from the endless dunes that surrounded it. But within the Force, that place echoed with power. The moment of culmination, a lifetime of hatred meeting the quiet resistance of unwavering purpose, resonate for years to come. Maul's death marked more than just the closing of his personal vendetta. It marked the end of an era, the last remnant of an older blood-soaked conflict fading away, just as new battles gathered on the horizon. and in his final breath, he understood what had slipped beyond his grasp for so long, the future he had spent. His life trying to prevent was already unfolding, and his place in that grand narrative had reached its conclusion. As Kenobi resumed his silent vigil over the desert, the legacy of their final encounter lingered like a whispered lesson, showing how the Force restores balance not through grand battles or brilliant displays of might, but through moments of clarity found in the smallest of jewels on the quietest of worlds. Beneath the twin suns, legacy, in the vast, intricate annals of galactic history, few figures embody the idea of survival enduring through nothing but sheer willpower, quite like Darth Maul. From his earliest days as a Sith apprentice to his final breath in the Tatooine desert, Maul's legacy is one of transformation, adaptation, and a relentless drive that outlasted the original purpose he was shaped for. He was born to the Night Sisters of Dathomir, forged by the Sith, shattered on Naboo, and reforged by hatred. Maul's journey stands at the crossroads of immense power and deep personal tragedy. His influence reached far beyond his role as Darth Sidious's apprentice. He left a mark on criminal empires, on galactic politics, and on the very philosophy of the dark side itself. Perhaps his most significant impact came during his brief but seismic rule of Mandalore. His control over that warrior world brought chaos that would ripple across generations. The shadow of his leadership would influence the Great Purge, the Imperial occupation, and the fragmentation of Mandalorian society itself. The darksaber wielded with such deadly grace in his duel with Pre Vizsla would become an even more contested and mythic symbol of power after passing through his hands. And the criminal underworld, it still bears the scars of Maul's ambition. The Shadow Collective, though eventually dismantled, demonstrated an unprecedented level of criminal unity. His method of bringing rival syndicates, the Pikes, Black Sun, and others under one banner, created a model for criminal cooperation that would be studied and emulated long after his death. Even in ruin, the remnants of his empire reshaped the power dynamics of galactic crime for decades. And then there is his impact on Force traditioner, legacy as unique as it is unsettling. Maul was neither fully Sith, nor merely a dark side acolyte after his fall from Sidious's favor. He carved his own path into shadow. His survival after what should have been a fatal wound on Naboo forced the galaxy to reconsider what the dark side could do, that hatred alone could sustain life, that the will to survive, when twisted through pain, could anchor the soul to a shattered body. This chilling revelation added a terrifying new dimension to Force studies. The brutal methods Sidious used to mold young Maul would go on to influence Inquisitor training under the Empire. His hybrid combat style, merging traditional Sith forms with feral acrobatics, would be dissected and emulated by darkside practitioners for generations. Even the modifications to his rebuilt body, mechanical limbs fused with Force sensitivity, expanded what was thought possible. He advanced a dark understanding of how cybernetics could harmonize with Force abilities. And yet, perhaps Maul's deepest, most enduring legacy lies in what he became. A living embodiment of obsession's cost. His decades-long pursuit of Kenobi became more than revenge. It became identity, and it serves, now, as a grim parable. Hatred may be strong enough to sustain you, but it leads only to isolation, emptiness. Maul's arc. Sith, apprentice to crime lord, to wanderlays, bear the dark side's paradox. The very power that strengthens you also corrupts and erodes you from within. But in death, Maul gave the galaxy something unexpected, something rare, a revelation. He became a cautionary tale not just about the dark side, but about purpose itself. In those final, fading seconds, finding peace in the knowledge of the Chosen One's existence. Maul proved that even those consumed by darkness might find clarity before the end, that maybe not redemption, but understanding is possible, even for those who have walked far into shadow. The legacy of his connection with Ezra Bridger still echoes in Force studies. Their bond became a window into how the dark side seduces, not with chains, but with intimacy, with empathy, with promises made in quiet voices. It wasn't domination that linked them, but a whispered offering, power, with no visible cost. A warning now to all who study the Force. His story endures in the relics he left behind. The Sith holocron he shared with Ezra, the mechanical legs that carried him across worlds, the darksaber that passed through his hands, the countless transmissions and files from his criminal networks. Each piece tells a fragment of the story, of a being who refused to be defined by what he was made to be, who survived when he should have perished, who forged his own path, however tragic. In the end, Darth Maul transcended his role as Sidious's weapon. He became something far more complex, a breathing testament to the price and the power of surviving at any cost. His legacy reminds us that even those created as tools can write their own stories, for better or worse. And now, his rest beneath the sands of Tatooine marks not just the end of a life, but the end of an era still. The ripples of Maul's existence move quietly through the galaxy, shaping its understanding of power, of purpose, and of the true cost of vengeance.